the way that we tolerate flirting and infidelity way more than in other cultures. I feel like sometimes this language of emotional labor, of prioritizing the self, can be detrimental to the point where we actually don't even care about the other person. I think the thing that I enjoy the least would be Parisians. It's kind of bad because there are a lot of them in Paris for some reasons.
Hello and welcome to another podcast. Today's guest is a French creator who makes commentary videos about cultural trends, gender roles, and relationships. She has also published a book called Collapse Feminism, the Online Battle for Feminism's Future. I found her content to be well thought out and definitely discussion invoking, so I'm excited to dive into the intricacies of French culture and relationships, as well as get into some of the struggles we face with looking for love in 2023. Welcome to Alice Capel. Thank you for coming on today, Alice. Happy to have you
Thank you
here.
for having me. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about the French dating scene. Let's start with that. So for anyone who's not living in France, what do you feel they have to know about the French dating scene?
What do they have to know? It's interesting because, obviously, I've been traveling quite a lot, and I taught French in various settings, etc. And the topic of relationships and dating is something that comes back pretty often. And usually, I'm very, very negative. I go just be careful with those French boys because they're gonna start talking to you or sound all romantic and blah blah blah. But don't get tricked, But I would say that maybe two things that come to mind with the dating scene in France is that it's less. In comparison to other countries and other dating scenes, let's say, it's less structured. So it's less, you need to say to this person that you like them after a couple of dates, or then you need to say this and this and that. It's more let's go with the flow, see where that goes. And I know that some foreigners or expats can be a bit confused with all of that because they're am I in a relationship? Am I not in a relationship? What is going on? So I guess that would be one big feature of the French dating scene. Another one, and it's interesting because I had a conversation on that topic with a British friend recently, is the way that we tolerate flirting and infidelity way more than in other cultures. I mean, to be fair, it's a very Latin thing, to be honest, but it's true that, for example, we were talking about, is flirting cheating? And for me, it was no, it's not. And for him, it was yeah, it kind of is. And so that was interesting to see the sort of cultural differences there. So I guess, two things that come to mind regarding the dating scene here. Maybe in terms of dating apps, I know a lot of French people, a lot of friends of mine use dating apps. We kind of all hate them. And it's so anti-French, it's so anti all the the stereotypes we associate with romance in France and things like that. So, but I guess we do use them a lot as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think the first point is something that comes up a lot, especially when we compare the French dating to American dating, which is all about labels and labeling the relationship. You go on 3 dates, 4 dates, you're still dating around and seeing other people, and then you sit down and you have the exclusivity conversation. What is the reaction to that of French people? How do they feel about that style of dating?
You mean the more with the labels and everything?
Exactly.
I feel it's becoming more and more common though, because of how open we are now about, open relationships and the fact that you can't just have fun and not communicate with the other person your intentions. So I feel maybe maybe it's changing when maybe we communicate way more. Maybe we establish those labels way more as a form of, maybe also with the development of therapy, the therapy speak, all those things. So it's hey, you actually have to tell the other person what you feel and things like that, because you don't want to hurt them in the end. And so maybe putting the passion on pause or on the side to make sure that you don't hurt the other person. So I guess, maybe it's changing. Maybe we're adopting that sort of dating style way more in France. So maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I feel things are changing.
Where are you from in France? Are you from Paris or somewhere else?
I grew up in the north of France, in Lille, and now I'm based in Paris. It's been two months, but I live very close to, even I grew up quite close to Paris still, so I would go to Paris quite often. So more northern France, really.
Yeah, Lille is 1-2 hours away from Paris, I think.
It is, yeah.
I stayed there at one point, and I loved it. It was a lot more, I would say, Belgian influenced than it is what you
Exactly.
would
Yeah, yeah.
assume. A
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of beer
That's
drinking.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's funny because, like, for example, the way I was raised and like the things we say about people living closer to Lille is like we're way colder than it's more like the German style, like the sort of German yeah type of being where it's more like way more direct, way more. But that doesn't mean that we're cold at heart because like we're also known for being like very welcoming because people don't want to come to the north of France. There's so many stereotypes around the north of France. So it's like, no, we're actually nice and like like we're not the Parisians, but at the same time like we're very more way more direct in our style of communication as well.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you find that Parisian dating is kind of what I've heard is that it's quite commitment phobic and very much kind of dating around as well. Do you find that?
Yeah. I don't know if it's something that's specific to Paris or if it's something that is just specific of living in big cities. Because like everywhere I traveled, I spent some time in New York, London, etc. I always hear the same stories. It's like, yeah, it's either like you have two options. Either you have the people who don't want to commit, just want the sort of situationship type of thing. And then you have the other type of people who are like, I want to commit. This is the moment. I want to have kids, husband. And like, so if you are in the middle trying to build connections, but it's maybe it can be a bit difficult because like that one side of no commitment can sometimes be sort of impersonal. So for example, like a friend of mine is trying to find, the sort of middle ground of like, I want a connection. I want emotional involvement in that relationship. But at the same time, I'm not going to commit to like kids and, marriage and things like that. And like, so I feel like it's more of a city life thing, just people having their career, people like so many people coming in, coming out. It's like constant flow and maybe have to add that extra layer of like Parisian romantic love that makes it even less clear, I would say.
Yeah, that's very true. I feel like cities like New York, LA, Paris, London, they attract a certain type of people that don't want to stay in their hometowns. So they come there looking for opportunities. And as such, they're obviously not as willing to have a family and settle and like do that kind of lifestyle. The people that do that obviously usually stay in smaller towns. So of course, then New York, has the fame of you dating around for an eternity, like the most commitment
Yeah.
phobic city, I think, in the world. I think New York and LA and Miami in the US at least are considered the worst to find someone to commit to someone. And then, of course, we have Paris and London, like all the big cities, they kind of fall into the same category. Do you feel like the dating scene, I don't know if you're in it, do you feel like it's changed in France in the last few years? Do you feel like people are becoming less willing to commit to a person, to a relationship? Is everyone just looking for the next best thing?
That's interesting. So I haven't been on the dating scene for a while because like I've went from relationship to relationship or like transition. But like just from friends, etc., because that's a topic that comes back pretty often in conversation. I feel like the COVID lockdown era had very much an impact on my friends and their relationship with love and romance. Um, they started to crave stability way more than they used to in the past, and I feel like now that we're really like out of that phase, maybe the freedom, wanting to experiment type of thing comes back. So that's something I've noticed among my friend group. But at the same time, like I'm 25 and I start to see also like different among my female friends, for example, like different expectations when it comes to relationship, where it's like, okay, like I had fun early 20s and now maybe I'm looking for something different. So it's interesting to look also like the sort of the dynamics of like with age, like how that changes in the context of city life, where depending on the gender, like some people will look for different things. But yeah, I feel like COVID definitely had like a sort of I want a stable lifestyle, I want a stable relationship effect on people, and now things are getting a little bit looser. But I don't know, yeah, I don't really know like for younger people how that kind of plays out. If something I've definitely noticed is like how flaky people are now. It's insane. It's insane, really. Like even at work or like just it's like a just like this is kind of concerning, I think. The sort of the I matter the most, because I see it kind of like that. It's like I matter, my emotions, my everything about me matters, and therefore I am allowed to, like say no to that person and or something like that, and last minute, or just cancel these dates because I don't feel like it. And it's like, I don't know, like, that kind of, I don't really like that, really.
I agree. I feel like, people always ask me, like, what's the best dating scene around the world? And I'm like, I honestly don't know. Especially like if we look at the Western world, if we look at like Europe, US, Canada, Latin America, I haven't found a place where people, when we're talking about India, South Asian countries, obviously that's a completely different dynamic there. But when I'm talking about the Western world, I mean, we have such choice. We have such a, I would say, paralysis of choice. Like we have just so many options. And I also feel like it's become so much about the self, which is in itself, like, it's a good thing. You want to live a life that's you want to live the best life you can live. But then what happens is we've all become so flaky as a society. And I see that all over the world now. I mean, from France to the US to Germany to Italy, there's a tendency to just not commit. I see it on dating apps where my friends will say, well, we're having a conversation, I'll ask him a question, he deletes me, like, it just out of nowhere. And I think we've set the standard so high as well that it has to be like the best thing. And it has to be right now. I have to feel incredibly passionate about it, and I have to continue feeling passionate about it. It's become this incredible high that we can't really live up to. And so you're right. I think like the flakiness is definitely a big part of our society.
And what I find interesting with that is that a lot of people will then criticize dating apps, being like, oh, dating apps are shit, blah, 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 whatever, I won't use them. But it's interesting to me because dating apps are just like one medium through which the way we behave in society is exposed, I don't think that, of course, like the way dating apps are structured will favor that sort of ghosting, because you can delete someone like that and disappear. So obviously, but I made a video recently on the sort of instrumentalization of emotional labor, and the fact that a lot of people will put forward this argument like, oh, I don't want to do the emotional labor of doing this and that. And of course, there are cases where it's totally valid. Like there have been cases, I've heard of friends who were on dating apps and had very bad experiences, men just being very aggressive or like not understanding that they don't want a second date, and like maybe the reasons are valid, etc. So for safety reasons, like totally ghost, run away, girl, or boy, or whoever is in that interaction. But generally speaking, yeah, like I feel like sometimes this language of emotional labor, of prioritizing the self, can be detrimental to the point where we actually don't even care about the other person. Like it's a real person on the other side of the screen, and like you kind of owe them something. You owe them an explanation. You owe them, because if you start to normalizing this behavior in dating, you're going to start normalizing it in other areas. And it works in many different directions. Like if you start normalizing ghosting people at your workplace, or like disrespecting people at your workplace, then you're going to start doing that in your dating life as well. So it's just like, for me, it's bigger than just dating apps. It's like a whole like cultural phenomenon of prioritizing the self at all costs, but also at the expense of others and their well-being and their right to like know what is going on. So yeah, that's something that kind of frustrates me as well.
I love that you say it's just a medium, because obviously if you do meet someone in real life, you can't just in mid-conversation walk away. They're asking you a question, you just walk away. You obviously can't do that. But it shows who you are. It really shows a lot about who you are, and do you have integrity? If you can do that online to someone, I wouldn't personally be able to do that. I feel like I would at least like to leave someone with an explanation, so they don't go out into the world feeling bitter and resigned and feeling like, what, people just, they just don't see me as a person. And you're right, because the person on the other, on the other side of that, we don't think of people as people anymore. If you're on a dating app, you're thinking, whoa, I don't care. I just don't feel like I don't feel like answering. I invited him on a date, but now I don't feel like showing up. So I'm just gonna do nothing about it, right? Back in the day, you would generally meet someone through friends or because they were your neighbor. So there was a kind of community feeling, and in a way that made this person I mean, you basically knew who they were. Your friends
Yeah,
knew who they were.
accountability. Yeah,
Accountability
a
matters.
sort of accountability. Yeah, yeah. No,
Exactly.
that's so funny that you mentioned that, because like recently that happened to friends of mine. They met through a friend. I was like, "Ooh, do people still do that these days?" It was just like so. It has become so uncommon, and it's just like, yeah, actually, like, and even I feel like we lost the art of like also making matches, like looking at our friends and be like, oh, this person could go well with this person, because we don't want to interfere or create like something that is, I don't know, but like people used to do that in the past and it was very obvious what was going on. I guess now, because we have dating apps that are very like, why you're on there, it feels like everything outside of dating apps has to be like 100% natural. But no, like back in the days, like things were very coded, very regulated, and like regulated in the sense that, yeah, when you say this, you expect that. And when you meet this or that friend, there's an expectation that they might get along. So it's just like, yeah, like let's not pretend that everything is natural when it's like outside of dating apps. Obviously, like all those cards that we have on dating apps, those hidden rules, they exist in real life as well. And like maybe we should, as friends, also encourage those connections, like romance or even friendships, like make those friends connect. Don't be scared that they won't get along, and if they don't get along, then that's it. But like create those connections, because people actually crave them. Like we want to meet new people, especially in cities. We want to meet new people, we want to find a potential romantic partner. And it's just, like recently what happened is that a friend of mine connected two of our friends together, and it was starting to look like it was going to go into a relationship. And then one of the person didn't behave very well, and so it kind of ended. And my friend who made the connection was feeling very sad, very anxious, because she was like, I'm responsible for this. And I was like, it's okay. Like, they are two responsible adults. You did something, at least you try to make that connection, and that's totally fine. And actually, like, you shouldn't feel bad, and you shouldn't stop doing that, because like maybe one day will work. And it worked for me, and I mean, it worked for a year for me and my ex now. But so yeah, like, we should normalize those things, really.
Yeah, I feel like we should normalize having more interaction with people in general. I mean, loneliness is an epidemic. It's There's so many lonely people out there. When I look at the news and a lot of things that are happening, like happening in Czech Republic yesterday,
Yeah.
I just feel like it's all a byproduct of the fact that we are bitter, lonely, and without getting off topic, because I do want to get back to France and French culture, but I think it's that when you're that lonely and you're so bitter against people, and you get all your source of information from TikTok and Instagram, and like all the opinions that you see there, it's so very easy to start thinking that the world is like this. It's women that are expecting a man to make 100K, whatever, a year, or it's like people that have these incredible standards. It's like, well, I'm just going to die alone. I hate the world. I hate women. I hate men. So it's just like we're really dividing people up, and we're creating a really angry world, I believe.
Yeah. And I mean, like, because like a lot of users online of TikTok, Instagram, etc., are young people, and the main characteristic about being young, and I've been there myself, you've been there too, so like we're not talking as like patronizing or anything, we've been there. It's you don't have a lot of life experience. You haven't gone through a lot of dating or things like that. So like your experience will be the internet, and I'm very guilty of that. Like, remember, as a teen, I didn't have many friends, and so the internet was like, oh, this is life. Like I learned about so many different sort of life experiences, etc. But the thing is that now that algorithms are like so well defined, they will show you what you want to see. So they will, if you into like, oh yeah, a man is supposed to provide and blah blah, they will show you all the manosphere stuff, even if you didn't even ask for it. Actually, they're going to show you the manosphere. A bunch of people did that experiment where they go on TikTok or like even YouTube Shorts, and it's like they scroll like 4 times and they're already like on a manosphere. Men need to do this and women need to do that type of thing. And it's like it's insane. So obviously, like when you don't have that sort of life experience, that confidence in yourself as well, because like as you date, as you meet people, you build confidence, you learn more about what you like and what you don't like. When you don't have that, of course you're going to be prey to all those online discourses, and you see a video, you see like there are 1 million views and like many people liked and many people commented, and you're like, oh yeah, that must be true. well, actually, no, like, no, that is not true. That is, maybe some people will believe that and will agree with that. But again, it's just like, it's not that one random person like being asked on the street. It's like compare with different cultures, compare with like different people, compare with your own experience. So yeah, I guess like one way to sum it up would be like to go out and touch grass, like just like go out and experiment for yourself. Like don't believe what's on the internet. And I feel like it sounds very patronizing to say that, but I'm telling myself as well, because sometimes I get caught up in those things where it's like, oh my gosh, like this is what is going on. And then for a second, I step back and I talk to friends or people in real life, and I'm like, oh, actually, nobody cares about this thing that seems like so huge on the internet. So yeah.
Yeah, I think like I don't know if you're aware of this post, but a few weeks ago, this post went viral. Maybe a few months. Maybe I just catch up late. And it was about American women and how there was a list of places that was deemed acceptable by American women for the first date, and it was basically a list of of like, don't take me to Starbucks, don't take me to Chipotle, don't take me here, don't take me here, don't take me. And it was a giant list of places that men couldn't take them. And it just you can't help but like how it evokes emotion, because you're like, man, they're so entitled. And so I can imagine a man going through that list and being like, oh, well, now I don't want to date women, I don't want to date American women because they're all like this, they're all entitled, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and you get that, right? Because that kind of controversial content that goes viral. You probably can see that with your own videos. The more controversial the content is, the more people react to it, the more reactions, the more virality it has. So of course, that's what we see when we log on to TikTok. And as you're right, like if I'm watching a video about like a red pill video, then that's the kind of the content that's going to get shown to me. And so I'm going to start putting everyone in the same category. Oh, all men are like this. They're all going to ghost. They're all flaky. They all don't want a relationship. I'm never going to find someone. I hate men. I don't want to be in a relationship with one. And same thing with men, all women are sluts. All women want a man who makes this much money. They're all demons, essentially. So we're like, now we all hate each other. But we haven't actually gotten to know each other, right? We're just putting each other in categories and we're hating the whole group of people that we don't actually know. We haven't talked to them.
Yeah. I feel like one of the biggest issue with that is how much we crave boxes. We just want to have labels. We want boxes. And it's not just like, again, not limited to dating. It's even as like a video essayist who's always trying to bring a little bit of nuance or like to complexify things or to be like, hey, there's no right or wrong answer. I see how often people will comment, but what would you do about that? Like, what would be the solution? I'm like, I actually don't know. Like, you can come up with your own solutions. And I remember like as a teen when I was trying to figure out like how you're supposed to talk to boys, or like how you're supposed to, because obviously like you don't know and you want to have some advice. Like the videos who would work the most were not like the videos on like helping with dating. It was more like what girls want in a boy, like what guys want in a girl. And it's like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I want. I want to know exactly what they want so I can have like a little list. And it's like, this is how we operate. Like we want very, very clear answers. And I feel like as a society, we need to resist this temptation to just go for the lazy solutions, the that is given to us like that, like so easily in the matter of like 5 seconds. No, like again, like going back to what we said earlier, figuring out what you like and the sort of person you want to date and what you're attracted to takes time. It takes a lot of like a lot of introspection, a lot of communication as well with others, friends, or partners. Like it takes a lot of time. It's complex, and even if you think you are a certain way, you might discover along like down the line that you are completely different. And what I like about dating now, and something I'm much more open to, is actually like openness, being open to discover new things, So that's why I'm kind of anti all those things like the love languages or things like that. It's not that I'm anti those things, but it's everything that is like super strict, or like I'm like this or I'm like that. I behave like this, therefore I need that sort of person. It's like, no. Like, how do you know? Maybe you think you are like that now, but like maybe in 2 years you're going to find someone that's going to change you completely. And then, so like constantly rediscovering yourself, constantly like asking yourself questions and resisting the urge to just go for the easy answers, which usually will be kind of, like if we like, it's no surprise that all that the easy answers often like go in the direction of men are providers, men are this, men are that, because whatever, and women are supposed to be feminine and blah blah. Like this is what we've been taught for generations and generations. So obviously, like when we are looking for the easy answer, we're gonna be drawn to those type of easy answers. And as a society, we're trying to go beyond that. I mean, just to make sure we are as inclusive and as like giving an option to everybody, really. So yeah, we really need to resist that.
When it comes to gender roles, how is it in France generally, if you could summarize it?
That's really interesting. It is very interesting, actually. It's very hard to. I made a video about it because like I was myself struggling to explain it when people would ask me like, hey, like, well, because it feels like France is a very liberated country in terms of like sexuality, dating, etc. But for me, that liberation is happening in the bigger frame of patriarchy. And what I mean by that is that the way women are liberated, or the way dating is liberated, is always going to benefit the man. So for example, when we talk about like French actresses and like how liberated they were, yeah, but like they were very prey to what we call the male gaze. It was always about being desirable to men. So short skirts, perfect. Cleavage, perfect. Go girl. Dress as you like. But it's always seeking the male gaze, like always like responding to what is desirable for men. I'm thinking about the icons like Brigitte Bardot, or people like that, who are still seen as like feminist icons. I mean, now if you listen to what they say about women, it's just very, very scary. So there's that. And then for dating, like, oh yeah, infidelity is way more tolerated, but for who? Like for men or for women as well? Nah, mostly for men. When a woman is cheats on her boyfriend or husband, like it's not very well. So it's like, yeah, perfect, liberated, great, but for who and in which sort of framework? So yeah,
I've heard that a lot of times women judge women more than men judge women. Have you heard of this? That like women oftentimes they're quite sexist as well. Like they could be like, oh, well, she looks like this, so she's like that, because of the sense of competition as well, and then just putting each other down in a way. What do you think?
Do you mean like in France in particular, or like
just around the world? Just as a society.
Yeah. No, that's very true, and like that's something that is kind of hard to come to terms with, especially as a feminist, because it's like, oh yeah, like it would be ideal to have a world where all women are like helping each other. There's a strong solidarity, or sorority, as we now call it. And I feel like we're moving progressively towards that. Like I used to be someone who would look down on women a lot, because I was raised by a woman. My mother was what we call like a not like the other girls. She wanted to not represent everything that is supposed to represent a woman. It's like femininity, makeup, sometimes like playing a bit dumb to elevate men or things like that. She was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm strong. I don't dress feminine and blah blah. So she kind of passed that on to me as well. So as I've said multiple times, like I grew up hating the idea of a woman, like what we associate with women, femininity or things like that. I wanted to be good at sports. I wanted to be good at math. I didn't necessarily look down on women, but I just, as for myself, like I didn't want to look like that. I wanted to be as manly as possible. And then I later realized that when it comes to dating, you have to look feminine. It's not because the boys look down on girls as like, oh, they're stupid, or they can't do this, or they can't do that. That's later on they won't date these girls, because that feeling of superiority then translates into dating. You want a girl who looks feminine. You want a girl who is kind of fragile. You want a girl who less smart than you, because you want to feel superior. So that was an interesting sort of thing that happened to me. But yeah, in terms of like the sort of hatred towards women, I feel it stems from that. It's like, hey, you're supposed to act this way. You're supposed to look fragile. You're supposed to do it. So whenever women try to challenge the stereotypes or represent something different, there's a little bit of competition there. And the other way around, like me, it was the sort of distaste I had for this idea of what a woman is supposed to be is a form of internalized misogyny. I looked down on women. I had internalized the fact that being a woman, being feminine was not good, bad, less inferior to what manhood was really. It's a conversation I have very often with older women. I feel like younger women now are way more aware of like the power of sorority, the necessity for sorority, the fact that like there's a lot of pressure on us, so let's not put more pressure like as women, let's help each other. But of course there are limits to that, especially in the workplace. So many women complaining that women in the workplace can be really, really mean, specifically because you have this sort of competition. You are in a male dominated environment, and so you can adopt those values, and you like put that pressure on other women. So that's very real. Like that's very real, and we should not deny it.
Yeah, they did a study. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically they put women in the room, and they had these girls come in, and they had one girl that looked very sexy, and they just kind of looked at the reaction of women when the girl walked by. And I think they tested, I'm not going to say the number because I don't know the number, but it was a quite large number of women, and the reaction was always judgmental, very judgmental.
Mhm.
Just sexy girl walking through. And that was something really interesting. I wonder if it's because there's like, we're all fighting over limited resources, like, oh well, I need to find a partner, and so I need to look better than her, I need to be better than her. I find with men, typically men are a lot more upfront about it. So if there's competition between men, they'll just like fight it out, they'll talk it out, they'll say something. But women, we're a lot more passive aggressive in a way that will be like, oh, you look so beautiful, and then we'll talk behind her back. Women do that quite a lot. And I've noticed this, competitiveness even in my own life, where I was in a relationship and a friend of mine was in a relationship. And I remember she would often talk about how great her relationship is, making me feel that my relationship was inferior. She probably wasn't a very good friend. Or, if you're both single, then it's kind of, you're going out to a bar, and you feel it. You feel that sense of competitiveness, like who's going to get approached more, who's going to get more looks. So it's always this like strive of, who's going to get picked. That's why I don't want to say this, but I find female friendships to be quite complicated. You really need to be very good friends for that not to affect your relationship.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, and definitely something I've because my female friendship for example, and all my female friendships are very, very supportive. Like we would never drag each other down, and we very much work on it as well. Because like sometimes we have those feelings that you've just described, where I don't know, like a female friend of mine will come into the room and like she's so sexy, like she's dressed so well, and there's a little bit of something in me being like, like get some reminiscent of like, oh, she's the hottest girl in the room, that sort of thing that I personally have a lot. Like, when I go into a room, there's this tendency to immediately compare to other women and see, oh, am I the hottest girl in the room, or like is there? And it's so wrong. It's so wrong, but it's something that we desperately need to work on. And like we're fighting against, gosh, so much. Like for years, for decades, for centuries, we've been told that what matters to us, like as a woman, is to look good. So like, how can you expect that all of a sudden we're gonna forget about that, and like we won't impose that on other women too? Because like, gosh, the comments on like, oh, she gained weight, like the sort of very little comments that is like, oh no, I'm not, like it's not an insult or whatever, but just the fact that that's the first thing that comes to mind when you see that person, instead of saying, I don't know, like, oh, she seems very happy compared to last time, or she seems very depressed, which is, it's immediately going back to physique. And I feel like, we definitely, even though sometimes we'll say, oh yeah, I love my girlfriends and blah blah blah, like, did you really like work on all that, again, like sort of internalized misogyny that you have within you, and that you are expressing right now by pointing at all those physical characteristics of this person? I feel like women who tend to do that are those who feel the less confident, who have the least self-confidence. Because when you're confident in your body, and you're happy with the way you look, or why would you like start criticizing others, really? Like, everybody's doing great, we're all looking gorgeous and blah blah blah. And I love those personalities as well, like, like women who will come into a room and be like, you're gorgeous, you're gorgeous, you're gorgeous, I'm gorgeous too. And I'm like, yes, that's the sort of energy we need to promote. That's the sort of friendships I want to have. I feel like I'm surrounded by women kind of like that. But a lot of work to do for us, like still. And I see it even with my mom, like sometimes the way she will talk about like women on screen or whatever. Oh, why is she wearing a cleavage like that? Well, maybe because she has to, maybe there's a little bit of pressure there, or maybe she's aware that her role on that show is to look good, and so she's trying her best to fulfill that role. It's just like there's so many things that we internalize, that we learn as women, and that we then need to deconstruct. And I guess the best way to do that is also to do that with your friends and be honest of, hey, like, sometimes I feel like a little bit intimidated, or sometimes I feel a little bit of jealousy towards you and the way you look or whatever. Like, talk to them, tell them, because like maybe they feel exactly the same way and you just don't know. And like just by sharing that with each other, you may be able to overcome it as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you're lucky to have very good friends. And you're right. Like, a lot of us do feel insecure in our own way. We look at someone else and we feel like they have it all together, but they're feeling exactly the same way. Do you feel like French society is quite judgmental? This is something that I've heard from quite a lot of people. What do you think?
I think so, yeah. I think so, but at the same time, because earlier you mentioned, like, I think you mentioned like American women or American people in general being like super like, oh yeah, you're gorgeous, or blah, blah, blah. And then once you leave the room, it's like a totally different discourse. So I feel like maybe we're more judgmental, but maybe this is just like honesty, like maybe we're a bit more honest and straightforward, or because like, for example, when I look for advice, or when I'm wearing something and I'm asking my friend like, hey, do I look good in this? And if I can tell like she's not being honest, I'm like, be honest with me, okay? Even if that's mean. And maybe we're more okay with that honesty as well, because like we're more used to it. So that would maybe be a reason why we're told that we're judgmental. But I mean, yeah, like there's a lot of judgment, especially between women. The looks, the it's just like, I don't know if it's specific to France, that sort of hatred between women, but like I guess with French culture, something that would be specific of French culture is the thinness. The fat phobia is like really, really strong, because we have this idea like whenever you think about the French girl, it's like a tall, very slim woman like smoking cigarettes, and like it seems that they never work out. It seems that they never eat. It seems like so it's like, if you don't fit that sort of ideal of the French girl, then you're not a French girl, and people will let you know. It's like you don't deserve that title. You don't deserve to. You have to be slim. You have to be white. You have to look effortlessly pretty. Your skin must be amazing. It's like all those things, and it's, again stereotypes that needs to be unlearned. And like the French girl, French culture, French love is like so romanticized. And every time I have the opportunity to kind of, no, that's not what we are, or like there's way more diversity than that, I do it really, like in conversations with people all over the world. Because the stereotypes, like we internalize them. And I see it myself, like when I'm abroad, I tend to perform the French girl way more than when I'm at home, And that's something that I find really interesting. Like I'll start, like acting a little bit more elegant, dressing a bit more elegant, or not necessarily smoking, but like, I don't know, even my accent, like it's just very weird. But like I've talked about it with other people. And it's like, I tend to perform like all the stereotypes about my country, or like even in dating, especially in dating, when I'm abroad. And I just find so funny the way like we reproduce those things in sometimes ways that can be harmful, really.
Yeah, I think it's because there is an association of French people as being elegant and charming and sexy in this kind of mysterious and aloof way. And so I get that completely, because whenever you're painted as something, you're like, well, people must want me to be that, because it's exotic for them, and it's kind of something that they find very attractive. So you play into that stereotype. I remember going on dates with guys who, which I try not to do. I'm originally Eastern European. I'm Russian, but I moved when I was 12, so I don't really consider myself very Eastern European or very Canadian. I'm kind of right in between. But when you go on a date with someone who's like, "Oh, you're Russian, yeah." Russian girls are so sexy. You're like, oh man. So are you expecting me to then play into that? Should I talk like this? No, So should I play into that now, because that's considered sexy? And I've talked to a lot of women from Brazil. They get really pigeonholed into that like sexy Brazilian girl, and so then you perform as that sexy Brazilian girl, because that's the stereotype. And so I can see that as a French woman as well. that's kind of like, oh well, they think I'm exotic, they think I'm this. I should not disappoint them.
Yeah, because it's like, so with some guys in particular, it's like it seems that that country where you come from, whether it's French, whether you're Asian, whether you're Brazilian, or it's like it becomes your entire identity. With some men, like I'm not saying not all men, not all men, but with some men, it's like, are you dating me or are you dating Alice, the French girl? You know, it's just like
Alice.
everything will be, yeah, everything Alice, yeah, everything will become like just, hey, like showing pictures of baguettes or whatever. I'm like, I don't care, honestly. Like, it just be you and treat me like a normal human being. Like, I'm trying my best to, like, you know, fit in your culture and like not look too French. So please, like, just don't remind me of this all the time. But again, yeah, like it's such a common experience. Like I've talked with you know, given the Japanese women, like the way they're expected to be submissive, quiet, cute all the time is like, I remember this person who said, like, I can't even shout, like I can't even be angry, because like all of a sudden it's like, what? You're supposed to be the Japanese woman being like all cute and shy and blah blah. It's like, oh come on, like can we go beyond the stereotypes? And but yeah, luckily, like I've met a lot of men who, you know, make an effort not to bring it back to that all the time. And to be fair, like sometimes it's kind of funny as well, like to play into that a little bit, play into the stereotypes, and as long as it's just like temporary, you know, and it doesn't turn into your entire identity to the point where it just like turns into fetishization or, or whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah, I see that a lot with French men when they come to, let's say, other countries. Whenever you look at their online profile, there's always a glass of wine there, and it's like, I really like to drink the wine and to have the croissant. You're like, oh my god! And when you were talking, I was thinking, man, maybe I've done this to men as well, because I remember going out on dates with French guys and like, do you want to listen to Charles Aznavour on the rooftop while we look at the moon? I'm like, oh
and
man,
you're like, yes.
because they know it works. They know
they
it
do.
works.
They do. That's why they do it, and that's why, like you know, that's why I kept on telling my students, like Irish students or English or whatever, beware of the Frenchman. Like, just be careful, because like every time I heard the story of, oh yeah, I met this French guy in Paris, I'm like, what did he say to you? Like, well, how did he present himself? Did he listen to French songs or blah, blah, blah? Like, I'm just very, very aggressive because I know them and I know their tricks.
What
yeah,
are those
just be
tricks?
careful. Just be careful, guys. Yeah, no, as you said, like the glass of wine, oh my god, the poems. But like, it's just, they'll sing in French or write poems in French. So you, as a foreigner, you have no idea what it means, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this sounds so gorgeous because like it's in French or whatever. But it's just, oh yeah, men love to objectify themselves as well, like as sort of like the French seducer. And it's something I've seen definitely. I've not necessarily seen, but as you said, like the profile on dating apps with the wine and just the pictures, and it's like, oh, I see you. I've been around people like you my entire life. I see what you're doing there. So yeah, be careful, girlies, with the French boys.
Yeah, I think that's something that happens when we stereotype a country, and we put really positive stereotypes on a country. Whereas like France, obviously, it's a country of love. French guys know that. I'm assuming that French women wouldn't really fall for that, because obviously they're French, they know all the tricks. They're like, you can't really seduce me with that, you know. But when it's an American girl coming to Paris, she's like, oh my god, this is, you know, Jacques, he's so sexy.
You chose the perfect name. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and like we have so many movies and so many shows like Emily in Paris that very much promote that stereotype. Have you seen Emily in Paris?
I did, yeah. I think I saw most of the series, right? Most of the season, sorry. Most of the season. Yeah, I did, yeah.
Wow. What was your impression?
Are you expecting some comments on that? Of course I was like disappointed, because it's a very, very filtered, very romanticized version of Paris, where characters only evolve in like 2 arrondissements, so like 2 areas, and those areas in Paris are very small. So like it's just where rich people live, and But I mean, it's okay at the same time, because it's like they're trying to sell a fantasy and people are coming for it. And I do understand that sometimes we just want entertainment and we're not trying to understand like all the class and social inequalities and blah, blah, blah. So I'll definitely make a video on it. And I did, about the fact that we don't talk about class in Emily in Paris, even though the characters come from very different background and like why they're all evolving. But anyway, that's another topic. But more generally speaking, yeah, I felt like it ticked all the stereotypes in terms of dating. I can't remember the name of the guy, like the French guy she falls in love with. Oh my God.
Neither can I.
He's like the main character.
The chef.
Yeah, who's now like a very active climate activist, actually.
Oh.
So very happy about that. But yeah, like it's just so cliche. And I remember like posing on some of the dialogues and like sending it to friends, being like, just tell me this is not the way you see us, like French people. Just tell me, please, because this is not possible. Like this is too bad. But yeah, I had a lot of fun watching it.
What I love is that the entire show, all the French people, they're speaking English amongst themselves. I love that when they're just like having a conversation, they're just speaking English the whole time. I'm like, have you been to France? With the accent. And also, I absolutely love that she somehow, on the salary that she's getting, is able to deck herself out and new outfits every single day, like the most expensive. And I also love her Instagram posting where she just snaps a photo, puts a cute caption on it, and sends it. I'm like, I wish it was this easy. I've put a lot of work on my Instagram, but like if I could just snap a photo and be like, hey guys, just eating a croissant. And if I could get that many likes on it, that's what I
content creators like could see the BS there. We could see it. We saw it. We saw the very basic pictures going viral, and we're like, no, this show is fake from start to finish. It's just like it's not possible. But yeah, it's, I don't know. At the same time, I think that's what I enjoy about the show, really. Like the fact that it was like so fake that there was no way to just. Yeah, it's just like put your brain on pause, just like enjoy the consume all the entertainment that you can, and just I guess. But like I would be frustrated if some people think that that's the experience that they would get in Paris, because I know that because of the TV series, tourism in Paris increased a lot. Like they created Emily in Paris tours and things like that. I know that people living in those areas were very angry as well, because usually there were very old, rich Parisians that were, oh, what is going on? All those Americans coming to Paris and blah, blah, blah.
What do you enjoy? Let's say, what is something that you enjoy most and least about living in Paris?
That's a good question, because I think the thing that I enjoy the least would be Parisians. It's kind of bad because there are a lot of them in Paris for some reasons. Because it's just, I don't know. Coming from the north of France and learning about the way Parisians see us, for example, kind of created that sort of, from the basis, like I was like, I don't like, nobody likes Parisians really. Like it's a common thing. Like when you live outside of Paris, you don't like people living in Paris and vice versa. So I guess there was that, and then just the accent that sounds very bourgeois, very like towards the end of sentences, and it's just like, I can't do this. Or maybe also the fact that they live together very closely and they don't interact much with people outside of the city, or sometimes they feel like they are, in the middle of where things are happening, because like people come to Paris from all over the world and blah blah, so they feel like they live in a place that is multicultural, etc., but they don't actually very much interact with, when you compare to, because obviously again, like I've traveled to many different places, so I feel like I have the legitimacy to compare and to criticize. When I go to New York, for example, when I go to London, these are cities that are also multicultural, but people really mix, like people from all backgrounds, from various ethnic backgrounds as well. In France, you don't have that as much, I feel, or at least like your identity, your background is not something that you should put forward. Like you can be Black, you can come from this or that country, but it's like, it's not that we're not interested in that. It's just like we're in Paris, we're in France, and I feel like it's not something that is encouraged. You're not encouraged to talk about your background as much as in cities like New York or London, where it's like sometimes your background is like everything that matters, and like people will know where you come from and like what sort of challenges you face in your life, etc. So that's one thing I don't like. But one thing I like about Paris, obviously, is just like everything is more chilled. You always have people having a glass outside on the terrace, like the famous the terrace, really. And yeah, it's super lively. It's very easy to meet people as well in bars, etc. It's just, yeah, the approach of life, the way they balance work and life is way healthier in compared to other big cities I've been to.
When you say you don't really like Parisians, what do you mean? What specifically is something that irks you? Is it a sense of, is it arrogance? Is it a sense of entitlement, superiority?
Yeah, I would say entitlement. I think I would say entitlement, and maybe the belief, maybe ignorance of what, again, like what multiculturalism and what living in a big city should be. And for me, what it should be, it means living in a big city is about like meeting people from all backgrounds, like connecting all those cultures and learning from those cultures. And I feel like in Paris and Parisians, they think they do that, but they don't really, like they don't really try to expand their horizons or learn about different cultures or learn about different people. It's very much about French culture, French food, all of that. Again, I don't want to like stereotype or generalize, but I feel like it's a general trend that I've noticed in comparison to other big cities. Yeah.
I've heard also that apartments have very thin walls. Is this true, that you can know your neighbors?
I'm very lucky because like where I live, pretty much all the other apartments are, I think it's old people. I think my building is full of old people, so it's very, very quiet. It's super quiet. But it's true that most of my friends complain that, yeah, you can hear like an argument happening like right next to you. But again, like I feel like it's part of the French culture as well. It's like your private life is not very private. It's like you can have an argument in the middle of the restaurant with your friends talking about politics. It is just very common for people to just express their emotions out loud in the public sphere or in the private sphere, but with very thin wall. And you're very aware that the walls are very thin, so you know that the neighbor is going to hear everything. And I feel like maybe that's a defining feature about like Parisian life or French life in general. Is like we love the drama, and we love to share it as well with other people.
It's interesting because even I was in Montreal. I was planning to move there at one point, and even in Montreal, they have this French neighborhood. And I was living in one of the apartments, and the walls were super thin. And even there, you get the French people like smoking and talking really loudly late at night.
Mm.
And I would go up and say, "Guys, can you be quiet?" They're like, "Oh, okay." But they continue smoking the whole night, and I could hear them, and I could hear them walking. I could hear them talking.
I guess like it's maybe a lifestyle thing as well. It's like, yeah, you're supposed to be talking all the time, or you're supposed to be living all the time, or like again, like this sort of breaking the barrier between private and public life, which is so common. And again, you see it like when you go in the streets of Paris, like people are having a drink outside. People, even like in the winter, like there's no season to go outside and get a drink outside, and people are having parties in there. It's just like the windows are open. Yeah. There are many good things about it, I really like that about Paris, the fact that contrary to London, where everything is like shut down and everything happens behind doors, it's like opening onto the world. But as you say, like there are some like some problems with that as well, like respecting other people's need for quiet and things like that. Like, that's important too. So maybe we need to work on that a bit more.
Going to Spain, for example, Spanish people tend to be very loud. And so when you're trying to sleep and they're screaming outside your window at like 4 a.m, you're thinking, I don't want any part of this. But then you move somewhere and you're living, let's say in Canada, where it's on the opposite scale, like maybe like London. It's incredibly quiet and oftentimes feels very structured as well. For instance, here, in order to get alcohol, you need to go to a specific like government-owned store. You wouldn't be able to get wine in just a regular store. It's very much like Sweden. We have the same rules around alcohol. And so even drinking is incredibly structured. You're not able to just drink somewhere. You need to drink in specified zones. And the whole life is kind of, it's too organized in a way where it's comfortable, but you also tend to, I guess it's quite lonely as well. I feel like in these kind of places like London or, maybe Toronto is another good example of that.
Even like the amount of markets there are in Paris, like it's insane. And the other day I was at the market, actually. I was for preparing a little breakfast with friends, and there was this woman who was talking to the lady selling the fruits, etc. It lasted for like 10 minutes, I believe, but she was just talking and talking and talking. I was like, oh yeah, it's great that those places exist, those places where people are outside socializing, because like you can strike up a conversation with them anytime, or you can. And for people who feel lonely and usually you don't see them because like they won't go out and stuff like that, like this is a good opportunity to, even if they won't talk to you, or even if they just sit down and have a coffee and read the newspaper, they will listen to someone else's conversation, and it's still like a form of socializing in a way. So I know, like, for older people, I think there's a few Instagram pages on like old Frenchmen, sitting on little benches with their newspapers and just like listening to whatever is going on. And I find it so cute. And like, that's why I love as well with this country. You're gonna make me love this city, Paris. I've been complaining about it like so much, but now I'm just like, this is amazing. Like everybody's like outside living their life and stuff. But I guess, yeah, like that's kind of true. And that's something I really like about Paris.
Yeah, I mean, every city that we choose, there's positives and there's negatives.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And we often tend to focus on the negatives. I find myself doing that as well. But talking about the not so positive thing, so let's talk about infidelity really quickly. So some really interesting statistics I found, that I think about 46% of French men specifically do cheat or have admitted to cheating, and 38% of women. So there's 10% difference. 8% difference. But what's interesting is that compared to Americans that find cheating on a partner unacceptable 84% of the time, only 47% of the French has said that they found it unacceptable as well. So what do you think about that?
No, that's so funny. That's exactly the stats that my friend brought up, my British friend, when we were having this discussion. Because I was like, no, like, it's okay. Like, people are okay with infidelity. And it was like, no, it's a French thing. Like, it's only French people. I was like, oh, come on. And then he showed me the stats and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Interesting. I guess, yeah, it's, again, this sort of, I mean, ideally, it would be us understanding that you don't own another person, you don't own their body, and therefore, it's okay if they, sex and love are two separate things. That would be the ideal vision of, and I guess a lot of people believe that, but I feel like, again, like, what is tolerated for men is not tolerated as much for women. So I feel like a lot of women come to terms with the fact that, yeah, maybe hubby is gonna, cheat on me at some point, and it's okay, more than, hey, like, sex and love are two different things, and this sort of progressive way of looking at dating or relationships. So yeah, I guess it's just like something that's been promoted in the media, in the cinema, etc. It's like this, yeah, French men cheat, women do as well. It's not as much represented on TV, but it's just like, yeah, French men cheat, and it's just like, it's just a thing. Like, and like it's tolerated very much. Like the sort of commitment, there's not as much commitment, and this is seen as something that is kind of normal in a way.
Yeah, I find it even interesting when you watch American movies, because whenever they show scenes where, let's say, the husband cheats on the wife, it's always a really big deal. And usually they'll have a conversation, they'll break up, they'll divorce. Someone's going to cry really hard over it. I don't know how it's portrayed in French movies. I don't remember seeing that. But do you feel like it has something to do as well with French kind of seeing love through grayish tones in terms of like, well, let's be realistic, love is love, but passion comes and goes. And so, I can love you, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be monogamous. I'm not going to be with one person my entire life. That's kind of unrealistic as well as a standard. Whereas like Americans are like, no, we're together. So there's more of a sense that it doesn't matter what's realistic. This is the happy end to the relationship that is often shown in the movies as well. Like we ride off into the sunset, the end.
Yeah, so I guess maybe what you're trying to say is like the sort of maybe being more conscious that love or long-term passion is sort of an illusion, and that for that reason, like once the passion is kind of over and like the sort of excitement you have with like, oh, this body, like I'm so attracted to this body, once that is over, it's okay to go and look for that with other people. Maybe that's true. Maybe we do have that sense of this more realistic view on love, and the fact that, you know, you fall in love but you fall out of love, and that it's okay in a way. I don't know, like it would be interesting actually to look at the as you mentioned, like once there's an act of infidelity in a movie, how is that resolved, and what is the sort of, you know, like what sort of characteristic or connotation do we attach to the person that cheats? Is it cheating for love? And therefore, you know what, like I wanted to make a video on it, but maybe I will, on the fact that one of the most precious, beloved movie romance is Titanic, and Titanic is about a woman, like, you know, cheating on her husband with a younger kid, you know, like so this is kind of problematic, like this is kind of bad, but again, like this is seen as like such a romantic story. So, you know, there's a lot of things to reflect on that, and I feel like Titanic it could have been a French movie, because the sort of story of like the woman falling in love with someone else and then questioning her relationship and like living eventually, but it's like it's still okay because it's love and like we understand it. I feel like this would be way more common, whereas in American movies or things like that, it's like, oh, infidelity, like this person is now bad for the rest of their lives, and it's like they can't change, they're just a bad person. Yeah, maybe there's something to look into there.
But I think it's interesting because, you know, Americans, they made her husband the bad guy in the end. Like they really pushed that he was like a bad person. He took the boat. He made, you know, I do feel like in most, let's say even European movies, the happy ending is not guaranteed. A lot of times the ending is just, it's like, well, what just happened? And something I find really interesting, and I don't know if you know of a sexologist, Esther Perel.
Yeah.
She's wonderful, and she's Belgian. She's not French, but she wrote a book called Mating in Captivity, which is wonderful. And it talks about the fact that specifically for, let's say, Americans, the notion of having sex is very much regulated. It's like, well, we need to have sex this amount of times, you know, or our relationship isn't going to be deemed normal. Whereas in reality, there's no such thing. It's not about the X amount of times that you're going to have sex. It's the quality of the sex. But it's also the fact that when you are very close together, when you're very much in love, that's when you may lose the appetite for sex because you're too much of the same person. There's no distance between you, right? So she talks about leaving that space, that distance. And she also talks about infidelity. And she shocked a lot of people by saying that, look, if someone cheats on you, it's not necessarily the point for you to break up with them. You know, you need to talk it over and see what the reason was, what the issue was. But it's very much not to be expected, but it can be a part of the relationship that can happen. Whereas, like, I feel like in America, it's very much, oh, you did that. You crushed everything we had. You killed the whole relationship. But it's like, no, we were together 15 years before that. Did I really kill the whole relationship by cheating on you? We did have those 15 great years. So that one slip up is not going to be a reason for us to completely end the relationship. So that's something very interesting because it's talking about the grayish tones of the relationship, but not necessarily you did this one thing, it's over, we're done.
No, I do. I really admire her work, and I remember watching it a lot when I was younger and trying to figure out like all those things, you know, like trying to learn about like, hey, how to do a relationship. I very much resonated with her approach, and as you say, like a very nuanced, very honest approach as well. Like she's very, very honest with whatever topic she dives in, and I feel like that's why people love her so much as well. Because like, hey, we're all human beings. Like we are sometimes prey to temptation. We do things that are wrong, but as you said, like, does it really reflect like all this time that I've loved you and I continue to love you? Maybe I love you in a different way, and that's okay, and we can talk about it as well. Because like sometimes, yeah, like your love for someone will evolve. It will start being something very passionate, something very physical. and then as things move on, it's like, oh, I'm starting to lose that sort of physical attraction. Then, but it is replaced with way more affection, and I see you differently, and it's like, yeah, things are evolving, and it's normal that we, I have a big issue with the idea that you commit to someone and you commit to that person the way they were at a specific moment, and you're expecting that person to remain the same. I don't, like, a relationship is beautiful when you leave space for people to evolve by themselves, to grow, to learn, and yes, maybe change to the point where you're not compatible anymore. You can't own someone to the point where you're just preventing them from finding their true self, their authentic self. And that means sexuality, because like, you can discover things about your sexuality your entire life. Like, some people discover that they're queer at like, way advanced in their lives. So it's like living that space, as you said, that sort of distance to make sure that you have that space to grow as an individual, and that is going to reflect in your relationship as well. Your relationship is going to be so much better because what you're going to bring to the relationship if you're not growing as an individual, it's just going to be circling back on like memories and saying to the other person, I love you, but do you really love them? Like, or you just love the fact that they belong to you? That is something that I ask myself a lot when I'm in relationships. Like, do I love this person, or am I more attracted by the fact that I have that stability, that comfort of having someone I can talk to, or having someone I can socialize with anytime? And that's one of the reasons why I broke up recently, actually, because I felt like I was not growing as an individual anymore. I was just maybe relying too much on that relationship to have my dose of socialization and things like that. And I feel like maybe that was something that went wrong. But so I'm trying to change, and it's not because that's the thing. It's like my ex and I, like, we get along, we're friends, like we have so much in common, and I love this person, I still love them. But at the same time, like, I feel like they could grow as an individual without me, and I could continue to grow by myself as well. And I feel like we need that distance. In that case, it means breaking up, but like, you can manage things while also remaining in that relationship. But that's something I always tell my friends, stuff is that include distance, include space in your relationship. Like, that's so important, really.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with what you just said. What's interesting is when people are asked when they find their partner the most attractive, do you know what they say?
What do they say?
Well, let me ask you that question. When did you find your ex-partner the most attractive? Or I don't know if you're currently in a relationship, are you?
No.
No. Okay, so let's talk about your ex-partner. When did you find him the most attractive?
And it's always the same thing with other people, with people in general. It's when they do something that they are passionate about. So playing sports, doing something artistic, just when I can see them being very confident and being very involved and passionate about what they're doing, that's the moment where I'm like, oh, I love this person. Like, I love what they do. I love just like, and I hate them the most. I dislike them the most when they feel like they're obsessed with me, like just like way too invest in the relationship, but like to a point where it's just too much, where you feel like, again, like lack of space, lack of distance. When they're too into me, like, I'm just starting to lose interest in the person. I don't know if that's weird or what, but like, that's the way it works for me.
Yeah,
what about you?
Exactly that. So that was the answer. And 100%, it's the same for me. So I think that's something very interesting, because, we can say that, oh, men feel like that, but women feel like that as well. We like people when we can see them with fresh eyes. When we look at them, when we say, oh, wow, they're really in their element, they're really enjoying what they're doing. Other people are looking at them, maybe. Other people are seeing them without all the baggage of the relationship, without all of that, past experience. And they don't necessarily belong to me in that moment. And so you see them through fresh eyes, and that kind of reignites the attraction. And I think, and that was the most common answer. A lot of times what we do, and I think more so as women, is that we really lose ourselves in the relationship. And that makes our partner typically lose attraction for us, because we're no longer our own person. We're basically just an extension of them, and that's not very attractive. So I think that's something very, very interesting about how it's really important to preserve the your own independence, your own set of hobbies, growing as a person. Because if you're not interesting to yourself, you're probably not going to be very interesting to other people either.
One of the reasons why I became a feminist is because I looked back on like my experiences growing up in the countryside, being surrounded by a lot of housewives or women who devoted a lot of time and energy to raising their children. And I always tell people about this anecdote of me at my tennis club sitting at the table where all the women were, all the mothers were. And it took like 5 minutes before they started complaining about their husbands, complaining about like all their lost opportunities, the fact that they were going to uni, but they had to stop because they needed to care about the children, or they want to go on holidays, but they can't because their husband doesn't want to, and things like that. And that was the moment where I'm like, oh, that's not normal. They should be able to live the life they want, really. And even if they are happy the way they are, I'm always like thinking about what could have been their lives if they weren't those precious. And I feel like now it's becoming more and more common for housewives or just women with children to have hobbies. So for example, at my tennis club, because I'm also a tennis instructor, we had more and more groups of women playing tennis, and that was great. That was amazing. But at the same time, it was not perfect, because like after the tennis lesson, they would have to go straight back home to take care of the kids, while the husbands, usually when they play, they could stay for an extra drink or things like that. So you could still see that sort of difference. But I remember even recently I went to, in France, we have one day where we celebrate music in June. And there was a group of women, again, like I would say 30 to 50 years old women playing instruments and things like that. And I was like, oh, I really, really love to see that. That makes me very emotional, because I know what a struggle it is for these women in particular who have children, who usually have to take care of them more than their husbands, who have to take care of the house, etc. What a struggle it is for them to be in that place, to do their hobbies, and to really enjoy and have a good time outside the home, outside the relationship. And that makes them better human beings as well. And I guess like that will reflect in their relationship. So yeah, just hobbies, just cultivating those hobbies, cultivating an identity. But again, like I know how much of a struggle it can be for some people, that it's very easy to say that, but sometimes, yeah, it's a bit more difficult. But gosh, it really is a big deal, really.
So we currently live in a world where women are very independent, much more independent than ever. And many of them are rejecting the ideals of the past, like getting married or having children. How do you think this is affecting us as a society?
I definitely think it's a good thing, because with independence comes, and usually when we talk about independence, obviously we talk about financial independence, so which brings more independence, because like, yeah, you can actually live a life by yourself. You can skip the idea of, settling down or having children. I mean, those can also be related to other financial concerns, but generally speaking, like just being independent, having your own career, etc., is a good thing. In terms of like the sort of feminism movement. Now, one thing that I do criticize is that maybe we went too far in that direction. And when I say too far, I mean that we've idealized this idea of, oh yeah, I'm a career woman, I'm a girl boss, that we kind of lost track of other things that can make us happy, free, liberated. Because like a lot of women are coming to terms with the idea that, or just questioning the idea that liberation can be found through work, because they go to work every day and it's like, oh, I'm not sure I'm enjoying this. I feel like I'm being exploited. I don't feel happy or fulfilled at work. I just don't like it. I don't feel liberated. I was told that I was going to be happy and independent and free, but I'm clearly not. And that's why I get concerned, because like that's precisely at that moment that some women will, or men will use that doubt, will use that unhappiness to promote a return to traditional values, where it's like, oh, you're not happy at work, then go back home and you're going to be happy in the kitchen and you're going to have a man taking care of you and blah, blah, blah. So this is very scary. So I feel like it's important, and to connect to what we just said, it's really, really important to show women that life is not just about work, or it's not just about domesticity. There are other things. It's not just, I know like we're told that this is our value in society as a woman. You make babies and you work. In a capitalist society, that's what is expected from you. But there are other things. You can have a political life, you can have an emotional life, you can develop hobbies, you can meet friends, that's the thing. I'm really big on that. Like, make friendship, find friends, get out of that relationship. Or it's not about like leaving your husband or leaving your boyfriend or whatever, but like meet friends, make friendship, try to prioritize that as much as possible. So yeah, I feel like that's what I would say. I feel like we went maybe a bit too far in the girl boss, independent, empowered type of thing, and now we're reflecting on this, and we don't really have any interesting alternative to explore, and we need to find an alternative, because otherwise traditional values are going to come back. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one or the other. It seems like it's either, oh, you have to be this, badass girl boss, and work like a man, be like a man, or it's that you have to be the trad wife, as you mentioned in your book, where you sit in pretty clothing with glossy skin.
Like these are obviously like
smoothies.
these are the two extremes, like the super duper girl boss and then the trad wife. Like, we are two extremes on one spectrum, but the spectrum remains the same. It's either domesticity or the girl boss. And it's like, oh, I want something else. I want to bring something different to my life. I don't want my life to be centered around work or domesticity. And often the two are connected, because even the girl bosses, like the Sheryl Sandberg, who wrote the book Lean In, which was like the Bible of feminism in the 2010s, I believe. Like, even these women have, at some point in their life, they know that they're going to have children, because they need to do it. You don't even know. I don't even know if they really question like their desire to have children or not. But it's just like, yeah, you have to have children at some point. So domesticity is always like somewhere, like it's never fully lost. Like, you're never fully a girl boss. Like, at some point, you're going to have to go back to that somehow. So yeah, this is very interesting to me, very concerning as well. And I wish that, women explored different ways of being, different ways of living outside this sort of very strict binary of work and domesticity.
I think it's a complicated subject, and you're very right. Like in the book, it was quite nuanced the way you explained it, which I really enjoyed. I think it's about, for me personally, it's about living the life that you genuinely want to live. And for me, ideally, it would be a combination of both. Because, for me personally, I mean, I'm in my 30s and priorities change quite a lot as you get older, and not for everyone. I think now there's such a focus on living in the moment, which I think is wonderful, but we're not really thinking as well, what's going to make me happy in 10 years? So maybe nowadays I really like being the girl boss. And for me personally, I want to keep doing this my whole life. Like, I don't see myself being a stay-at-home mom. I love what I do, but I love what I do. Not everybody loves what they do. And so for me, I want to keep doing this forever, because I feel like it makes me an interesting person. I'm learning a lot, and it's just, I want to have my own business. But I think for other women, maybe priorities are different. Like, I know women, they have no interest in working. All they want to do is take care of kids. And that's fine. I feel like if that makes them happy, let them live their own life and let them do their own thing. If that makes them happy, if they're not doing it because they have to, because it's, they're pressured. And so many societies pressure women into living a life that's not true to their own, where they wake up at 80 and they have so many regrets about a life that was just lived by someone else's standards. And I think like that, for me, the focus is living that kind of life. I think what you said about community and having friends is very important, because there's so many studies done about us living a way happier life and a longer life if we have that sense of community. And we used to have community back in the day. We all lived in communities. Nowadays, home signifies the four walls, but before it used to be a whole group of people that supported us. So we didn't really get married for partnership necessarily. It was more, an arrangement, but we had our friends to lean back on, and we had that whole group of people that supported us, and many societies still have that. But we are lonelier than ever because we don't have that sense of community. We don't have a relationship to people. We're just by ourselves. And so I think to each their own, in my personal opinion. But I think what happens with society is like we go so far left and we go so far right in the end. So it's like we go to one end of the spectrum, like, no, badass, kick-ass woman, and then we're like, no, this is not working. Whoa, let's go all the way back and now promote a completely like polar opposite way of life. So,
No, but you see, what I find interesting there is that I think that what you say is totally valid and totally true. Like some people have different desires. The only thing I'm worried about, and again, it's the same thing on that spectrum. It's like, because we live in a capitalist society, neoliberalism, so it's all about the self. It's all about like the individual, and you see it like it's reflected in dating apps. It's reflected in everything that we create. And what I'm worried about with like the rise of, for example, like trad wives or things like that, it's like it's a vision of motherhood that is very individualized. It's about, I want to be a mother, and I'm going to be a mother by myself in my little house, lost in the countryside. And what I fear about that is isolation, social isolation. And as you mentioned, like in the past, like it was way more common to have like several generations living in the same home, or like it was way more common for parents to die younger, or to like children to be sick or things like that. So like sometimes like an uncle and aunt would take care of the kids. So now like everything is so privatized, so individualized, that when someone says, I want to be a housewife, that means that they're going to be very isolated. And it is possible that it is not the case, but because of the structure of society, because of the way that it's becoming harder and harder to you need someone else to live in a place, for example, like prices are going up, etc. So everything neoliberalism, like all those policies, all the financial constraints, push us towards more and more isolation. So in that context, when someone says, I want to be a housewife, I want to like just let my husband provide for me and my family, I'm always like, be careful, girl. be careful, really, because it doesn't work like it used to do, where you had a community where you could talk to. And that's why, again, I emphasize on friendships, because like when you have a friend, that means you have someone to talk to. So if something goes wrong, if your relationship is not doing well, you have someone you can talk to, and someone's going to say, hey, maybe it's the right time to leave that relationship, or maybe you're not fulfilled. And as you said earlier, like I feel like sometimes like being a housewife also means, as you said, like you become an extension of your husband. You just become like the emotional support of the entire family. And therefore, maybe you have time, you struggle to define your own self, to define your own identity. But there are ways to do that. Again, by valorizing friendship, by being active in the community. A lot of housewives, a lot of social movements that exist were started by women who had the time to engage in those things, because they had a husband to rely on as well. Like usually, like the women who started the big social movements, who were part of social movements, were the women who had time to invest in those things as well. So these are all things to take into account. And like I like the fact that you bring that sort of historical aspect into it, because like saying I want to be a housewife or I'm a housewife a long time ago is not the same thing as today. And I feel like because of that, we need to be cautious. We need to pay attention to that, and be as careful as possible with the choices we make. And why are we making these choices, and what are the circumstances? What does that mean for me and my life to make that choice? But once the choices are informed, like I'm not going to tell someone like, this is bad, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. It's more like, yeah, like if that's really what you want to do, like and if you feel happy in doing this, like I'm not going to impose anything on you. It's like you live your life. I just want you to be aware of the choices you made.
Yeah, I'm always worried when something becomes a fad. As you said, if it's an informed choice, I very much respect that, because again, I'm not going to live your life. You're going to live with all the regrets that you're going to live with, right? So if that's something that you genuinely want to do it. But going online and of course telling everyone about it as that's the new thing to do. I never like fads, because I feel like fads come and go, and then people are so lost in their life. They're looking for kind of the way to go. And so a lot of people are not even thinking through their decisions. They're just going with whatever is the thing to do,
Trendy.
right?
Yeah.
Trendy. Yeah. The trends, the whole concept of trends, I find incredibly, I just
limiting. They're limiting.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, even when we look at TikTok and, now everyone's doing that type of video, I specifically never do that, because sure, it works really well for the algorithm, but do I really want to go viral because I followed a trend that every single person out there was doing? Am I in high school? I'm way past that age where I'm going to be wearing the same shirt because the new girl in school or the popular girl in school is wearing that.
But people are gonna reward you for that because, like, I see it with YouTube as well. It's like I could be making a video about like every new trendy topic or every new algorithm friendly thing, but sometimes I just pause and I go, no, maybe I actually don't want to do that because what image do I project? You know, like what sort of person do I look like when I do that? I look like someone who's like hopping on trends to get as much attention as possible, and sure, like people will understand that sometimes it is necessary, and I feel like sometimes, yeah, it is necessary to hop on those trends because maybe you have an important message to share. But if you just make a like a very like boring video on like a given topic and you have like this very like not clickbait title at all, like people won't listen to the message. So I feel like, yeah, like it's
It's
sort
the
of
catch
finding that
22.
balance. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like finding that balance between, yeah, like using the medium the best way you can to share that message, but at the same time, like not end up being the in that vicious circle where it's like always like working for the algorithm, and not working for the people who enjoy what you do and want to learn more about you and your way of doing, really.
Yeah, exactly. So it's such a catch-22 when you create content because you really have to establish your own voice, and you kind of have to always ask yourself the question, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it just to get the numbers? Because if that's the case, you're going to be swept left, right, and center trying to catch up with what everyone else is doing, and you're going to lose yourself essentially because you're not going to be. It's almost like even when we're talking about dating. There's a great book by Mark Manson, and it's written for men, but I read it anyways. And it's something, and I forgot the term for that, but it's basically very simple. It's kind of like if you're trying to be liked by everyone, essentially, you're not really going to be loved by anyone. And so if you're trying to kind of water yourself down, water your personality down so that everyone kind of likes you enough, you're never really going to find that person that loves you or hates you.
Yeah.
You have to risk being hated to be loved. And so for your kind of content, the people that watch that are not going to be people that are watching videos on what would you rate this girl from 1 to 10? Like that's a completely different demographic. It's essentially you're attracted to people that are your friends and that are your followers. But once they're a follower, they're going to follow you specifically, not because you hopped on the latest trend and you're doing that same video that everyone else is doing. And the fad that's going to eventually die, because as all fads do.
You know, like, and that's why I'm very happy that my channel grew very, very progressively. No spike, no, it's just like grew very progressively. So that means that some people came and left, and it's okay, you know, it's part of the deal. But I had this core community that's been here for ages because I've always done the same thing. Like the way I do things and the way I talk about those things, it hasn't changed much. The topics have changed, the analysis have changed, etc. But deeply, like, I'm still me, and I have my brand, let's say, if we have to call it that way. And that's what people want, really. They want to follow someone, they want to see consistency, and they want to see someone who's passionate about what they're doing and who's not doing it because, yeah, that's what should be done at that moment in time or whatever. And I guess another thing with that as well is that, and something I talk about in the book, is the online, the pressure to adopt online discourse and to follow online discourse and to be kind of a slave to online discourse. But like, again, like I was saying earlier, like when you go out and talk to people and actually listen to what they care about, like sometimes you realize that what is happening online is just like such a small, it's insignificant, really. And so the you commenting what is happening there is also going to be insignificant. What sort of content do you make? What sort of ideas do you want to push forwards? What sort of, yeah, why are you on the platform, really? And like that's something I keep asking myself all the time, because like the pressure to, you know, to engage with online discourse or to be a slave to online discourse is like so strong sometimes.
Of course, and that's because if you do that, you get the hits because people are searching for that, you know. So that's an easier way to grow. But whether or not that's the right way for you personally, I think you have to have a lot of integrity and be a really strong person and really understand why you're there to create content. When I started, it was 8 years ago. I wanted to make videos on how to date a French man. And nowadays I'm like, I'm too old for this. It no longer interests me. So people oftentimes, I got a little bit pigeonholed into that because I made a lot of funny skits on how it's like dating different cultures. And that was interesting to me at the time. But now I want, my goal is to go deeper into maybe the sociological factor of it all, you know, and that's why I started the podcast, because I want to have these conversations. And it's not just, give me 10 things to know about, you know, what happens when you go on a date with a French guy. And I think that, again, it's talking about how we grow. And how our interests change, but it's also like staying true to yourself and what makes you excited about doing what you do. Because when I talk to a lot of YouTubers, and I know you don't like the term YouTuber, you don't want to be called a YouTuber just like me, or influencer. That's the worst. I hate
Influencer,
that.
yeah.
Oh, that really gets me. I just imagine myself like talking about eating.
It sounds like
kale.
propaganda. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, like I'm a propagandist. I just influence
Exactly.
people and they just listen to everything I say. It's just
No, I wish I was an influencer, because people would buy things from me. Like my sponsorships don't do very well because they're like, we don't care about what you're just do interviews and stuff. But I wish I was like, guys, buy this, and I would make a whole bunch of money. But I never wanted to be an influencer for that reason. Is that like I hate that word. I don't see myself as that. And yeah, and again, it's a lot of people are on YouTube just to create content. So they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm just like a lifestyle DIY, the list goes on. I just vlog about my life. I'm like, I think you need to be a little bit more concrete about why you're there. I mean, is it just to make money? Because you're going to be in it for the long haul, girl or boy. That it's not going to be just a one day kind of spike thing. You're not going to become the next Mr. Beast, you know, and that doesn't happen for a lot of people. If it does, it can have negative consequences as well. Because once you spike, you're then expected to keep up with that same content. Like you've been pigeonholed into that. So
exactly.
It can be even worse. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like sometimes like you don't even define your, again, brand. I don't like this term, but like your identity, your online identity, you don't define it yourself. Like people will define it for you. So it has happened times where I produce a video, I'm not like super happy about it, but I'm like, okay, at least I've done something. And like it turns out to be something that people are really interested in. And then they keep asking me about doing the same thing or blah, blah. And I'm like, oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. So I feel like, to be honest, like I haven't found myself in that situation too much. So I feel like what I do online is very much what I'm passionate about. And like I feel like I'm free to really work on, invest, research any topic that I'm really interested in. But I know some creators who, went viral with something that they were not really passionate about, or that was not really what they wanted to do. And from now on, they just have to continue to provide the same sort of content. And that must be very frustrating. Like that must be really, really frustrating.
Yeah, there was a Dutch YouTuber that I don't know if you know her, but she went viral a couple of years ago, or a few years ago rather. And she was doing videos on just languages. I think it was like Dutch, something. And then she did a video reacting to Brazilian Portuguese. And Brazilians, they have a very strong social media community. And so they loved her because she's, blonde, European, and she's reacted to their language. And they asked her to make another one and another one and another one. And, a few months later, all she was doing was Brazilian content. And I was like, was that something you genuinely wanted to do, or was that something that was the bestseller, so to speak? So she got really pigeonholed into that, and then she went to Brazil and she stayed there, I think. So it was just I saw that whole thing,
her all identity. God damn it.
That whole channel evolved in front of my eyes. I was like, I don't even know if I would like that kind of publicity. It's then that's it. That's all you're doing. But I really love this conversation, and I must admit, I didn't read the full book because I didn't have a lot of time, but I read quite a lot of few chapters, and it was very, very interesting. You pull out a lot of information from different creators, different sources. So guys, for anyone that's listening to this podcast and want to delve deeper into Alice's work, she doesn't want to be called a YouTuber. I want to call you a social commentator. I think that probably fits better.
Yeah. We say video essayists, social commentators. I feel like I'm in between the two. So like both terms work very well. Or online analysts. I mean, there are so many terms like to avoid that influencer label. But like, why not in the end? Like, why not using the term influencer? Why having a stigma around it? We do influence people, that's true. But call me whatever you want to call me. I'll take it. But yeah.
Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the podcast, let us know in the comments below if you have any questions for Alice as well. Post them on YouTube, and you can also do that on Spotify. I'm not sure about Apple. I haven't figured out the logistics of Apple yet, but you can go ahead and work in progress. There's too many platforms to manage. So I'm just one person. But if you guys liked it, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to check out Alice's Instagram, YouTube, I'm going to link to all of that below. Alice, thank you so much for taking part. Such a great conversation. Wasn't so much about culture. Like we went all around, all over the place, which I really love with this.
I love it when it's like very genuine, very like go with the flow type of conversations. These are the best, and I hope people will have enjoyed it. Really. Au revoir.
Au revoir.